Hey people, it is Saturday, May the 25th. It is 4:40 in the afternoon and around 17 Celsius, feeling a bit warmer with a slight humidex of more like 20 Celsius. And I'm on Yonge Street, just south of Gerrard, looking south. And there you can see the rising Concord sky, a new super tall skyscraper. And a number of old storefronts were demolished and facadized as part of this new development, including what was once one of my favorite pizza places called the Big Slice. So I'll be curious to see what new retail moves into these spaces once the development is complete. If I can get my words out. So I thought I'd take a walk along Yonge Street heading north here, past a number of other new developments, some of which have been recently completed. And we'll take a look at the sort of retail that is starting to move into these new retail spaces at the base of these large condo towers. Because I noticed recently that finally some of these empty spots are starting to fill up. And prior to redevelopment, they're often filled with small mom and pop type shops, as much of Yonge Street is currently made up of. But you'll find that those mom and pop type shops don't often return to the same location when those new retail spaces open up, simply because they can't afford the rents. The new spaces are often quite a bit larger than what was there before. But every once in a while you can be pleasantly surprised at what does come to these new retail spaces. We're currently walking past the Aura condo, which does have a large retail podium. But this was a parking lot, so there were no existing older retail on this site. So I guess anything that came here was an improvement over what it was basically a parking lot, including, as you can see, IKEA, Marshalls, a number of other shops, and the infamous shops at Aura, the dead mall in the basement. And this is College Park, another very old building. It's a little mini mall inside there, with some residential on top. This was the site of a very large Eaton store in years gone by. And of course, later on, the Eaton store relocated to Yonge and Dundas as part of the Eaton Center development. Eaton's is long gone, but the name still exists in the form of the Eaton Center Mall. And the mall itself currently has no large department store anchoring it. The original mall, that is. After Eaton's closed, the space became a Sears. And then after Sears closed, the space became a Nordstrom. And then Nordstrom left Canada, and the space is currently vacant. And quite a busy, bustling day. It was raining for most of the morning and into the afternoon. But the rain clouds have departed. And it's a fairly comfortable temperature. Much more to my liking than the hot, stuffy, humid weather that we had a few days earlier. Just crossing College Street. So from this point north, we will pass a number of new condo buildings and some brand new retail spaces at the base of those buildings. Now I was talking about how sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised. Well, this towering condo was completed quite a few years back, and it was previously the site of a pretty nondescript retail building that wasn't very architecturally significant, so no great loss there, but there were a number of retail stores in that old building that included a Hoops sports bar and grill, and wouldn't you know it, years later, the Hoops sports bar and grill came back to the same location in the new building. You don't see that happening very often. But unfortunately, something like this also tends to come along, which is definitely the last thing I'd like to see come to a retail space on Yonge Street. This is a bit better, but it doesn't generate a lot of pedestrian activity. And here's another new condo building, more recently completed. It's still not really 100% complete. I don't think it's fully occupied yet. But a number of old retail shops were located on this stretch of Yonge Street. Some were demolished. This one was retained and incorporated into the development. I can't recall what store used to be here. And as of yet, nothing new has moved in yet. So we'll have to wait and see what will come to this spot. They retain this old clock tower. And a couple of old retail buildings here were demolished and replaced with this new storefront with 2 commercial units, neither of which are occupied yet. You can see they're quite large. I'm pretty positive that what was there before, the units were smaller. There was probably more like 3 or even 4 units here before. I'm not exactly sure, but they definitely weren't as big as these new units are. And probably a heck of a lot cheaper. Now, across the street is where things get interesting. Some more somewhat recently completed residential buildings. Now, this was the site of an eclectic, odd-looking strip mall type building that didn't really fit in with Yonge Street. I believe it was built in the 1950s after the old historic storefronts on this stretch of Yonge burned down, and so a strip mall type building was built to replace them, which, as I said, did not really fit in with the character of Yonge Street, but it was full of many interesting and diverse retailers in rather small units, and it was quite lively and seemed quite healthy. And then eventually, as time went on, that old strip mall was bought and pegged for redevelopment, which, as you can see, took place. And these new retail spaces were offered here at the base. Not as many as before, and quite a bit bigger, obviously. And it was a couple of years that they sat empty with nothing moving in, and I started to wonder, would anything move into these spaces? And just in the last few months, all of a sudden, they've all started being rented out. I think this was the first one to be rented out, and then that restaurant on the corner. And you can see what's coming now. So not as eclectic or interesting as what was here before, but I'm somewhat pleasantly surprised by these newcomers here. Seems to be an emphasis more on food, which is good. But you can see the difference between this side and the old existing historic storefronts on that side of Yonge Street, with much smaller store locations, more numerous. Hello. Got a sub place coming here, Firehouse Subs. Fit for less. I think this one is still up for grabs, maybe? I don't see any sign. So it looks somewhat encouraging that stretch might at least have some life to it again. Now this stretch of the old traditional look of Yonge Street here. The buildings are the same, but these businesses have changed quite a bit in recent years also. Much more heavily restaurant oriented now than previously. And many of the restaurants are Asian restaurants. And it looks like this building, which is not a historic storefront obviously, is slated to be redeveloped with this 68-story tower, where we'll see the same thing happen here with retail units at the base. Big LCBO. Most likely the LCBO will return to the base of the new building, and maybe the Dollarama too. There are two big retailers that can certainly afford it. Sorry. And we're at Yonge and Wellesley. New tower rising there.
Shower right away. Oh, no, I don't shower.
You always have to wonder when you see someone walk along with two bikes, where did they get that other bike? Got a great stretch of old traditional retail here, with many newer restaurants, as I mentioned. Old traditional storefronts in any case.
Yeah, yeah. They don't have mic, they can go.
New restaurant coming here. Now, this was an earlier development from over 10 years ago or so, where they refurbished these old storefronts, made them look far, far nicer than their neighbors, which have not seen such a refurbishment. But then unfortunately, the retail that moved in was not always the best. It's not even retail, as you can see, a bank. Aroma Espresso Bar is nice enough, but it takes up quite a big chunk. I think there were several more smaller retailers there before. But I'm not going to complain about that. I think it more or less improved that stretch of Yonge Street compared to how it was before. And that was part of that condo behind, you can see. And now here's another one that's just recently completed. This was a restaurant here on this corner in this building, which was completely torn down and rebuilt, but not in its entirety, just the two facades. It's now part of the podium of this condo building. And nothing has moved in here as of yet. So the building that was here was not remarkable or historic either. So no big loss there, but the retail was lively and eclectic. Whereas as of right now, it's not much of anything. Now leasing. Everything is still now leasing. We did get this interesting new public art though. And that's a new tower there also. Fortunately, this corner building was not affected by that development. I think that building should be untouched. This is one of the more impressive old facades on this part of Yonge Street. And you'll still find some of the old fun Yonge Street here and there. This is a cool store. All kinds of rock t-shirts, posters. Another sort of relic from the old Yonge Street. Here's Isabella Street. The old derelict Scientology building there. And there are proposals all along this stretch of Yonge for new towers, which will affect several of these stretches of old buildings, including the CAA Theater here. There's another significant stretch of new retail just north of Bloor. So we'll make our way up there. We're at Charles Street. Another awesome building that should never be touched. It should just be left unaltered by any developments as far as I'm concerned. Car just sounds like a fart box to me. I don't know if he thinks that's a cool sound. And there was some older retail here at the corner of Yonge and Bloor, which was redeveloped into the One Bloor East Condo Tower with new retail. So you got a Chick-fil-A. This is in the constant state of flux with places coming and going. Several places vacated the retail podium in recent years, and only now is it starting to fill up with new things such as the Ballroom Bowl here. And I think a flagship Nike store will be moving into this location as well. It was vacated by Nordstrom Rack when Nordstrom pulled out of Canada. And the old Stollery's store, which was demolished on this corner to make way for the One, a future super tall skyscraper, which is climbing fast. And the retail space at the base of the one was slated to be a flagship Apple store. But now that is uncertain. All right, let's just head north of Bloor. Got a Lululemon flagship store opening on that corner. These are older retail spaces that have been here for decades, really, that just come and go with the years. But just up ahead is a stretch of old historic retail storefronts, which were preserved as part of a couple of condo developments. And the existing retail was vacated. And now the development is wrapping up, and those spaces are just starting to fill up now with new retailers. So like that other development to the south that I discussed earlier, they refurbished the old historic storefronts. There goes the fart box farting up Yonge Street.
No, it's straight.
So these buildings were pretty run down and worn out looking, and they refurbished them, made them look as nice as if they were just built, even though they were built originally in the 19th century. And all the existing retail, of course, was vacated, and many of these new spaces are still vacant, as you can see. Retail available, retail available. See the new towers. So I'm glad they did such a good job at refurbishing the storefronts. It certainly looks a lot nicer than before. But so far, a dentist's office and a Starbucks have moved in to all of these new spots. So I guess time will tell. See if anything else of interest might move in here. Opening soon, a jewelry store. Well, we are in Bloor, Yorkville, and a Japanese Express haircut coming soon. So I guess it's somewhat eclectic. Get another look at the nicely refurbished row of facades. So I hope you enjoyed this stroll up Yonge Street. It's like the new Yonge Street. You think it's an improvement over the old Yonge Street? It's obviously still a work in progress. And speaking of progress, I'm all in favor of that. So I don't immediately poo-poo changes such as this. Things evolve, cities change. Yonge Street can't stay the same decade after decade. Just waiting to cross the street, and I'll start wrapping up. Like I had to brake hard to avoid cycling into the side of the turning car there. There we go. The lights just take too long, in my opinion. There's a look south down Yonge. So hope you enjoyed what I was saying. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the new Yonge Street. How does it compare to the Yonge Street of days gone by? Are you old enough to remember the old Yonge Street? I tend to stay optimistic, have a glass half full type of attitude about these things. So be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description where you can do so via PayPal, as well as via my merch store, or you can also support the channel by becoming a channel member, or by sending a super thanks if you prefer. And you can find me on Instagram under KContinuum. So thanks for watching, and thanks to all the channel members. And be sure to keep checking back, because as always, I will continue.